everybody, and welcome to Inclusively. This is a podcast where we discuss all sorts of different aspects of inclusion in telecoms. And I am Monica Paolini from Sense of Healy, and I'm here with Chris Lewis, who is the co-host here. And I'm going to let Chris introduce the topic and our guest today. Chris, over to you.
Thank you, Monica, and welcome everybody. And Francis, welcome back. I think when we first discussed and were on stage together at Mobile World Congress many years ago about you were the head of accessibility at IBM at the time. Do you want to tell us what you're up to now and what you're covering?
Sure. I remember exactly the year is 2014, I think. It's amazing. That's 11 years ago. Yeah, at the time I was IBM's Chief Accessibility Officer, first of a kind, and I had the responsibility of making sure IBM internal work environment and product are as accessible to our employees and also externally to our customers. Since then, I have jokingly graduated from IBM in 2016, and now I have my own company, Francis West & Co. And we are a company that provide digital inclusion and innovation based on our different capabilities globally and based in Boston, Massachusetts.
And that's interesting that the move. How would you define then the leap from accessibility to inclusion? Do you have a framework within which you think about all of these things?
Yeah, my whole actually journey into the accessibility was completely accidental. I actually spent my first 25 years in IBM selling I guess you can call mainstream hardware, software, services. Actually knew nothing about disability, knew nothing about accessibility. But an opportunity in IBM research is a career opportunity to head up this organization came up. But once I got into it, to me, this accessibility is not just about people with disability or aging. It's really what I call the human first technology. Even back, when I joined the accessibility team almost 20 years ago, because we're in IBM research, we saw the direction of where the technology is going. That is, the form factor is going to go from the clunky mainframe to a form factor of like an iPhone, of course, driven by the telecom industry's advanced technology revolution. So then the user experience is very important. And also we know that the technology is going to allow us to have that personalization. So to me, accessibility was all about, using technology to augment human experience for all, that afford is the first time the opportunity to frankly equalize the digital experience. And so that to me was a definition of accessibility. And of course, now is evolving into a societal term, inclusion. But I started out just thinking very simply, wow, we can use technology to even out all the different ability, different capabilities.
And I think that goes back to this issue that certainly when I grew up as a vision impaired person, the technology was very clunky, very specific to a blind person. And what I think the way you describe it is much more, we need to think about the whole human experience. And then if one channel, one sense is cut off, then we already design into the process, into the product, that it can be used by everybody. And so it enhances everybody, but it also allows somebody with one sense cut off to be able to benefit from all of those things. Whereas in the past, it was very disability specific, even condition specific within the eyesight or the hearing community. So I think you mentioned this, it almost becomes an innovation engine for everybody, doesn't it? Rather than a charity third sector sort of thing, which we've had in the past.
Yeah,
and also,
I think.
Sorry, go ahead, Frank.
I was just going to say this. Actually, we have to thank the mobile industry, right? I think, again, when the mobile technology came on board, all of a sudden, when you walk around with your iPhone under the sun, the color contrast actually matters, right? And then we are on the go when we're driving in the car, your eyes are on the road, some text to speech, matters. So all of a sudden we could be at any given time situationally disabled. So I think to a great extent, we have to thank that telecom industry actually allowed all of us to have the freedom, but then at the same time situationally disabled, so, but augmenting by the technology. So to me, that kind of actually set free the accessibility just for people who are, with disability or aging.
Yeah,
Monica, that
and
was.
yeah. So this is something that, it becomes like inclusivity becomes like a way of developing the technology rather than an add-on that you say, oh, we forgot about this group of people over there, let's fix it. It's just a bigger but how do you see that being, clearly we made a lot of progress on that sense, but how do you see it developing, the whole concept of inclusivity, because it's become more not just a technology point of view, but also a society or workplace? So how are the two balancing out, and how do you think they're developing in that respect?
Yeah, I think, as you probably know, that at least in the United States right now, we have this bit of a debate, what DEI is about and all that. And I think it actually stemmed from a little bit of a talking past each other, in that, if you think about a disability, a lot of these organizations historically kind of grew up from a kind of advocacy kind of a background, right? And then technology is all about, business and profit driven. So the two camp sometimes really don't understand each other's intent or language or purpose. So it created a bit of a friction. And right now the friction is the highest point. But I think if we all step back and fundamentally look at this, I think everybody's driving toward the same goal. For example, if you're in the business, what you want is greenfield opportunities. You want to have white space. You want to grow your revenue. You want to grow your market share. And people with disabilities, or especially aging, we talked briefly before this call about aging. You're going to acquire disability just by age. And so that is a huge marketplace. And so if you are a startup, I don't care whether you're 20 years old or, some or established enterprise, you want that business. And but at the same time, because the whole concept of the human, what I call the human first, right now it's got a little bit mixed up in this whole discussion about identity and all that. But I think I have faith and confidence that as time goes on, we will understand that the technology actually can enable all humans to interact and interrelate and also communicate and be productive. But we have to be very intentional about it, because technology cannot just be for some. And actually, technology is one of the it can level the playing field. And so I think it's actually good we have some debate and discussion, and then the potential lead to, like Chris mentioned, that I really believe this is actually the driver for innovation. This kind of a diversity of thoughts, diversity of experience, and diversity or differences in thinking. It's going to drive to a disruptive innovation.
Yeah, and I guess that, you point to the fact that we need to have more discussion, which is exactly what we're trying to do, because it's new for all of us, whether you are disabled or whatever your position is in the and so the question is to try to understand how this can be used to our advantage rather to
Right.
see it as a constraint. And
Right.
sometimes I think that a lot of the approach is like you either blame someone else or you enforce things rather than looking at the positives of it,
But I think
which are
what Francis is saying,
clearly. And so how can we learn to focus on the positive as a society?
but I
Chris,
think,
you
yeah, I was going to say, I think your start point, you say that identity is not the start point, because if you start with identity and then you say, well, I'm an individual, I have these requirements, and then I'm an individual, I have these requirements, then it's quite difficult to build up from that. Whereas if you start from the premise that we're going to design for every possible permutation, and let's face it, the power, I think your point about the role of the telecom industry is really important, that we've really democratized communications and spread it out and made it much more available to everybody. In many ways, I think it's just there's certain tweaks required to change it so that that device, whether it's a smartphone or a smart speaker or your TV or whatever, that if they're universally designed, then it sort of takes identity out of the equation, or identity in the way that it's used in politics and the way it's used in DEI.
Right.
So I think, which I think is a really so Francis, we often talk about the inclusive design and the work that I know your venture various up in Toronto does, and the Royal College of Art here in London do. Where they think inclusively when they're designing. I was even talking to them when they're talking about designing toilets inclusively the other week when I was talking to somebody, because it's important, right, that you cater for every possible permutation of the people that will need it and the circumstances. So in a sense, we're just taking that design thinking and bringing it into and it's not even just the telecom world, is it? It's however I think you're right, the human first approach.
Right, human first.
If humans are going to engage with each other, with machines, with AI, with the cloud, whatever it is, we just that thinking it should take those exclusion factors out.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what I mean when identity is on top of being human. I mean, the common ground here is that we're all human. We're not artificial intelligence. We're not technology. We are human. And I do part of my company, we actually do a lot of advisory work with startups. And a lot of time I tell the young startup CEOs is that, when you think about a solution, you really, in a way, I go back to the Maslow hierarchy of needs. You have to think about the basic, what the customer wants, what the consumer wants at the basic need. If at the foundational level, for example, is really shelter, food, mobility, and these are the common things that everybody wants. So if you can design to that kind of and have a understanding that there is a leveling, of a needs, and then understand your market segment, then it's really not designed for one segment, but it's designing for all. And then you use Monica, you mentioned, how do we do that? It is exactly like using the today's kind of a popular term. It's co-piloting. If you're going to design for human experience, then you should have human with the diverse experience as a part of your team. And back in IBM, we have like hundreds of thousands of software developers, and my organization was involved in advising these hundreds of thousands of people to think about accessibility and build accessibility into it. And then so we have a process called concept, and then design, and then development and deployment. But it's at the concept and design level, I think, if you really want a human-based experience, and then be able to attract the maximum user, that's where things, that's where we should engage, versus at the back end, I design, I develop, and then I ask validation, do you like what I just designed? So it's not a rocket scientist thing. It's really just a changing the mindset of thinking that we can actually easily turn this thing upside down, and really create the additional, not just the benefit, but the profitable growth kind of proposition to business.
But Francis, that requires, and I agree, but that requires that every element, every constituent element involved in that the conceptualization of the product, is aware of those different requirements.
Mm-hmm.
And so the education, I just contributed to an AI skills forum up in Norway, and when you're talking about educating the new generation coming through, that's fine. They're quite aware of it. But in terms of the people who are there now, how do we educate those people in terms of the product? Does it require that we change the makeup of the employee base within a company, to have a more diverse?
Well, I think Yeah, I think it has to be top down, right? I mean, first you got to the decision maker, people at the highest level has to believe that this is actually has a business benefit. Assuming that's the case, yeah, you have to institutionalize it. You have to operationalize it. I mean, part of my work in with enterprise customers and even with startup is how do you build, for example, the concept of digital inclusion into every fabric of your business, not just on the hiring side by the HR, not just by the testing side by the testers, but how do you integrate what I actually have a 6E framework. First is embrace. A lot of times embrace the idea of inclusively, but I always ask the next E, can you envision it? Can you really speak to what it means to your business? And then do you enact policy or governance inside your company? I don't care if it's a three-man company or a 300,000 people company. Do you have governance and policy? And then do you enlist resources? A lot of time talk about, inclusive design, but they don't set aside money to the fifth E, which is enable, to train. Like in IBM, we integrated accessibility into our design boot camp. So every designer who are learning to design product will be exposed to the accessibility idea. So it's a scalable kind of education. And the last but not the least, ensure, how do you measure, and the measurement has to be different based on what part of your organization. The marketing organization we should have a different measurement than say product development should be different from sales. But every part of the organization should have a metrics that actually measure the progression of the inclusivity or the inclusion or accessibility. That's how you create an authentic organization that really drive this kind of work forward, not leave it to like chief diversity officer or one, chief or a head of accessibility to implement it. You do it institutionally, you do it operationally.
Now, this is I think really important and goes to the core of what the discussion is these days, especially in the US, but not just in the US, which is, recently what a lot of companies did was to create the DEI unit, whatever. And that seems to me that it's kind of like when they have the AI unit or whatever, and AI or inclusivity, they are kind of across the company. So you cannot just have a few people that direct everybody else because you just create resentment. It's just not the way to go. It just
Right,
seems to me. And I think that that's what you're going to. It's like it has to be everywhere. It's not just one or
right.
two. You might have a few people, of course,
Well,
but
it goes back to how you perceive this. Is this a program du jour or this is a business imperative? If it's a business imperative, like right now, AI is a business imperative. So you're not just going to hire a couple people and then put them out there. You're putting money in your product development, your marketing, in your HR, in everything. And to me, for the company who really gets it, it's from kind of inside out kind of implementation to make it authentic and then make it real and then frankly make it competitive in the marketplace for the long haul.
now you see that a lot of companies are kind of rolling back on DEI right now. Does it reflect that it's a new approach to DEI or moving away from the commitment to it?
Well, this is highly controversial, so it will be hard for me to comment on individual companies. But I do think it's actually I'm an eternal optimist, right? So anytime when there's a crisis, there's an opportunity. I think this is one of those pivotal moments that we will see, how company react to this right now a hypersensitive environment. Now, in this case, it's a little bit more complicated than we experienced before because you have more of a political kind of perspective add into the business perspective. But I think some at least the company that I have been associated with and watching, and also in the startup world, they're continue to move forward because these are the people really care about the outcome. They're not caught up in the moment, kind of a narratives, right? And they know that it will help them to retain and capture the best talent. They know that it gives them the opportunity to expand their marketplace. So they're quietly actually moving forward. Maybe they don't call it DEI, maybe they change the name, but in the end, it's the outcome that we all should be looking at. What is the outcome? That is that you really truly a business understand that by hiring people with different abilities, whether it's disability or aging or Asian or whatever, is that it actually helps to make our company more innovative and then can respond to the change in the world. When I give talk, I talked about we are in such unbelievable changing world. Every day is different. So the playbook concept in the old days, like a standard operating procedure is out the window. And the only way the company can react to this kind of rapid change is you have a diversity of employees who can give you the market intelligence of what's going on in, let's say, in China, in India, in South America and whatever, because that is intelligence can help you to make a better decisions. So to me, because we're in this changing world, we actually need diversity more than ever because it's one way doesn't fit all at all.
And Francis, what about obviously Monica and I come from the telco world, and with your role in IBM, I'm sure you touch the telco world. Do you have a view about how telcos are doing this? I think for many of the big tech companies, we know that Apple are very focused on accessibility inclusion. We know Microsoft have done a great work in it. Salesforce we talked to recently have great stuff built into it. Do you have any thoughts on the telco world, and particularly I accept your comment about the diversity of employment, but what about the diversity of customers, the ways in which we can engage with the customers, to go back to your comment on universal design?
Well, I think telco, it's funny you should mention that because we talked about, the mobile revolution. Really, it's the one that gave the whole idea of the accessibility it went from a little a to big A, right? Accessible anytime, any place, anywhere. It becomes possible if we didn't have a telecom kind of revolution. And then with 5G coming in, it allows you to have all kinds of for example, instant, translation, right? I mean, we have a startup that doing captioning, but they are now using AI dubbing. So any of this real time experience of, for example, taking our conversation right now in English, immediately transfer to German to Chinese, it's not possible without the telecom, kind of 5G background network. So I think telco technology is almost a prerequisite, for us to continue to drive what I call the human first experience in the future. And I think I haven't been studying the European telco company, but here in the United States, I can tell you, for example, Verizon is one of the big telecom company, and they have a foundation has been very active in not just promoting but engaging in some of the innovation and also promoting the education and accessibility through this initiative called Teach Access, where they create curriculum to give it to universities, because this is one of the problems. Even today, a lot of university teaching computer science or UX, they don't really embed a deeper accessibility in there. So industry actually came together with Verizon as one of the key companies to say, you know what, we are telling you that we need this. And so they created a curriculum to give it to the universities to teach. And I was just on a UN a panel with a T-Mobile. T-Mobile, again, as a company, is looking at aging area very proactively and trying to see how they can help the aging population through the phone experience, so that they don't either stay socially isolated, or if there is emergency, that there is a way of alerting friends and family. And yeah, so there are, I also know some ride sharing companies are exploring teaming with a telco company to see how they can improve the safety of the ride share experience. So all these new innovation, I think is actually contingent upon a very strong and reliable network behind. And so I think, to me, the telco uh, actually it should step up and really not just take the leadership, because they've been leading. I don't think they realize how their product and their technology is so impactful to every human, because telco is about all, right? I mean, this is one of those few technology that really can touch and impact everybody.
Yep.
Absolutely. And I think that sometimes you actually are in a way almost too critical, because you just a lot of times you think we talk about how bad it is to have the phone all the time connected and so on and so forth. And clearly I don't want to discount that. That's clearly an issue. But when you think about the advantages that it
Mhm.
brings, so sometimes we kind of tend to be a little bit pessimistic, because as you say, even without doing anything, just about it, you connect people.
Yes,
Just
yes.
that you're saying,
But
and
I think the challenge is the business case, because I think you mentioned Verizon with the foundation. We know people like Vodafone do great work in their foundation, but we don't want it in the foundation, do we? We want it to be part of the business units. So
Yes.
we want the consumer piece of BT to be looking at it, or we want the business bit of Orange looking at it, and making sure they build that diversity of thinking, and 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 leveraging all of those different channels to be able to support it. And that requires that, I think, to go back to your earlier point, Francis, that you need to have that in that conceptual stage about, okay, we're going to design this for everybody. We're not going to design it for older people later on. But so I think the business accumulating the business, I suspect that the accumulated business case, by helping people with all sorts of different disabilities, that all the aging population, those without a sufficient level of skill, if you add all of those together, that actually makes for a great business case. Whereas in the past, we always did it on the business case for making it a screen reader, or making it sign language, or translation. So I think that's the exciting thing, that the position we're in today.
Right, right. And then also, I go back to the initial. It's great that you guys are actually that you're business people, technology first, and then moving into kind of in this inclusion area. I think we actually need more. And I myself, it's similar, right? I was business and then move into, because to me, it's like the business leaders. A lot of them, they don't quite get it yet, not because they don't want to. It was never discussed and translated into the business construct. So that's why one of the reasons I'm still
Definitely.
at it. I feel like I've been privileged to have the business of 25 years in the mainstream, never heard about disability experiences. So at times I feel like I can relate, when I'm talking with the business leaders in their language, in their tone, and to explain the differences. And more companies actually are understanding that. And also, I'm very, very optimistic. I think the Gen Zers, the next generation, potentially will have a more organic, understanding of this. First, they're organic, they're digital native, and also secondly, they've been mainstream to grow up, with people with different abilities or different identity amongst them. So I think they're going to have a much more flexible view, and at least that's what I believe in.
Okay, Francis, before Monica brings us to a close, I got one question for you, and this is a bit of a tricky one. Do you think AI is likely to increase accessibility and inclusion, or widen the gap?
I think it's going to help, but with the caveat that we all have to learn about AI here and now, and we all have to participate in AI now, here and now. So I, for example, if you go to my LinkedIn, I have a post that I have a personal AI. There's a company called Personal AI that I've been working with, and I've been giving, for example, the transcript of this interview will go into my personal AI. So I'm creating my digital twin, so to speak, and it's accumulating data set. And as you know, AI is made of two things, right? Logics and data sets. So there's a lot of discussion about, the data set is biased and whatever. I think the large language model has evolved, but now there's a personal language model, small language model. If we just think about it, if each one of us begin to go down, for example, to create our own data set through something similar to a personal AI, and then we make the decision when I want that information to be let out, and that cannot be monetized or not can be scraped by somebody else. Over time, we will have a great opportunity to actually infuse the data set with our point of view, and that's not possible before AI got here, right? I mean, I use ChatGPT to create to help me edit my writings. Every time I do that, ChatGPT is learning more about my perspective. And obviously my perspective, as we talked about here, is kind of a broader, is innovation based versus identity based. So I think it really has a huge potential to lessen the gap and actually to give individual a much higher voice, but only if we are intentionally focused on learning about it. This is a great technology that anybody can get on. This is the thing. It's not like you have to learn COBOL programming before you can, get into the computer room, and then the computer room is locked away, with water cooler, right? I mean, it's on your phone. You can just type ChatGPT. So it is incredibly exciting. But come with a responsibility, come with an intention, come with a purpose. But that's in the end what human needs to do. Like, we cannot just be sitting, sleeping at the switch and let AI take over. We actually have to wake up and manage them.
Yes, and as Chris said, unfortunately, I have the sad task of taking this to a close. But on this note on AI and responsibility, I think that it's a good place to stop and think more about this. So, Francis, thank you so much for being with us today and share your thoughts.
Thank you.
Thank